and welcome to another episode of The Defenders on Sansad TV. And we have two distinguished air marshals with us who will explain to us how the Indian Air Force is able to accomplish such a range of tasks that go well beyond air operations once conflict and a war starts with the enemy. But even at peacetime, the Air Force can be a game changer. How? Our two experts will explain that. We have with us Air Marshal Anil Chopra, whole string of decorations with his name, and as also the director of the Center for Air Power Studies. So obviously a man who's looking at various dimensions of air power and the use of air power as a game changer. And we have a double war hero, Air Marshal V.K. Bhatia, VRC and Bar. And he will explain to us how the Air Force is positioned to not just inflict operational damage on the adversary, but also the capacities it can bring to bear with the extremely wide variety of aircrafts on our fleet. And that, to you, sir, is my first question. The range of aircrafts that we have in our fleet, the capacities they have, and the continuous upgrades that are being provided to these aircrafts to be conveying a message that our Air Force is truly a force multiplier.
Yes, Maruf. First of all, I like to break this question into two parts. So first of all is our capability and capacity to be able to inflict punishment on the adversary when required. And that is our operational clout. And when we are talking about that, as you know, we have a mix of different types of fighter aircraft, starting from the good old MiG-21s to MiG-29s to Mirages and Jaguars. And we have moved on to Su-30s. And of course, the latest acquisition that we have got is the Rafele, which is going to be a great game changer. And let us not forget our very promising indigenous home product, which is the Tejas. And as we all know, Mark 1 has already been inducted into the Air Force. And today, HAL is working towards making 1A a reality very soon, which will start getting inducted into the Air Force by 2024. And then, of course, we move on to the Mark 2 by 2029, and then, advance towards what we call the AMCA, or Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, which is going to have 5th generation capabilities. So this is as far as our operational capabilities are concerned. Now talking about the operational support that we can provide to the two services and to actually shape up the battlefield in terms of operational logistics that you were talking about. So here I would mention two very major acquisitions that we have had in the recent past. One being the C-17 Globemaster III, which is a heavy strategic stroke tactical airlifter with the capability to be able to lift 77 tons in one go. And of course, then we have the special operations aircraft, which also have the similar cargo capabilities of lifting up to 20 tons of load. Then we have the Russian aircraft, the An-32s, a large fleet of them, approximately 100 aircraft. And then we have the smaller aircraft, the Avros and the Dorniers. Now to just give you a glimpse of what these can do. If you go back 2 years, when the Chinese incursion took place across the LAC in 2020, and we had to react very, very quickly. And that was the time, as you recall, the Chinese had brought their heavy equipment also into the fray. We are talking about tanks, APCs, and so on and so forth. And we had to very quickly induct these. And that is the time when the C-17 proved to be a real boon for the army, because we were able to airlift their T-72 tanks, as also their APCs, and not to speak of the heavy air defense equipment to give us the necessary AD capability in that area. So that is
very comprehensively covered, sir. But I'll come back to you about lift and operational capability and how it is achieved in case of certain exercises that are carried out in high altitude areas. But Air Marshal Chopra sir, I want to quote a quote from your quote, which says that Rafale is better than anything else that the PLAAF has to offer, which is the Chinese Air Force. And then combined with the S-400, it will compensate for the shortfalls in fighter aircraft that the IAF has and lessen the defensive burden on the forces.
Yeah, thank you, Maru, for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Undoubtedly, you're obviously reading some of the articles that I have been writing. And when the Rafale came here, there was a general euphoria, excitement in the entire country because everybody was talking, we all were talking on TV channels that Rafale is a game changer. I'm going to briefly explain to you why we call Rafale the game changer.
Jeet.
This aircraft is 4.5 generation.
Right.
And the only thing it doesn't have is the full stealth. It has got partial stealth. But if you look at the aircraft from front to back, the ISA radar, best ISA radar between India, China and Pakistan. Perhaps only in the Western countries like America, the ISA radar they have is better. The electronic warfare suite in this aircraft is total comprehensive suite. Again, Chinese have got nothing like that. Even in their J-20, they don't have the kind of ISA radar and the electronic warfare suite we have got. Twin engines, 2 engines, M88, which are proven, tested, low maintainability requirements, and high survivability in operations. This is our third area. And weapons. We know that Meteor has come, more than 150 kilometers range. There is no missile of this kind, though yes, the Chinese are talking of PL-12, PL-15, but the no escape zone of the Meteor is the highest in the world. That means once somebody has come within a particular range, he cannot escape even if it was to carry out a combat maneuver. And see the other standoff weapons that have come with the Rafale. So an entire Rafale package of weapons is going to be a game changer in the region. Presently we have got 2 squadrons, we have got 2 air bases, we have got infrastructure for actually taking on another 2 squadrons. But of course that's a decision with the government, and the Indian Air Force will take someday. Surely we are still continue to be around 31 fighter squadrons. The desired or the authorized figure is 42, and there is a need to acquire more aircraft. But we are very happy that the indigenous LCA is shaping well. As Air Marshal mentioned, the LCA is shaping well. LCA Mark 1A is likely to have the first flight shortly, and in 2023 it will start inducting. Mark 2 is already on the drawing boards. The physical metal cutting has started. The Mark 2 will...
Just a quick question, sir. Sorry to interrupt your flow, but time is of a constraint, and that is, to what extent is the Air Force involved with the design and production of these aircrafts?
At every stage. I have been a test pilot, I have been the commandant of aircraft system and testing establishment, which works directly with the HAL and the DRDO. So at every stage, from the first drawing that is made, the Indian Air Force is part of the system.
Therefore, why was there was this controversy about the Air Force not happy with what is being delivered?
No, see, what happens is, the only thing that Air Force sometimes is not happy is timelines. When you give very ambitious timelines to the Air Force, see, Air Force has to plan. We have to fight the war. The Air Force is responsible to the country for the defense of this nation. And therefore, it is important that when we want to acquire a system, either Indian industry must deliver or we must acquire it from outside. And therefore, sometimes because of excessive delays, it upsets the planning of acquisitions for the Indian Air Force. The second point I want to mention is coming back to your first question about S-400. S-400 has already started inducting, notwithstanding the threat of Katsa that we have been having just because it's a Russian system. But everybody, even the Americans, acknowledge that S-400 is one of the top-class systems covering up to 400 kilometers of range, having 4 different types of radars, missiles, which are covering various bubbles from very short range to very long range targets.
True.
Yes.
Air Marshal Bhatia, sir, going back to your earlier answer, you know, I was reading that there was Operation Hercules that was carried out as an exercise by the Air Force and the Army last November, and in which they looked at, you know, various platforms for use to achieve the objectives of an effort for real-time demonstration of inherent heavy lift capability of the IAF, in which the C-17, the IL-76 and the AN-32 were all used. Your view, sir?
Yes, as we all know, this exercise was conducted last year, and basically it was to have that what we call a spud kind of a thing into putting something in the TBA or the tactical battle area in a quick time. And this exercise actually proved Air Force's capability to be able to lift as much as 500 tons of load within daylight hours in one particular day. And this was done at Leh. So, I mean, and it was not, shall we say, 100% capability that the Air Force had. Actually, if it is required, the Air Force has the capability and the capacity. If we use all the available transport aircraft that you mentioned, the IL-76, the C-17s, the C-130s and AN-32s, our capability is more than 500 tons a day. But that particular exercise envisaged lifting of 500 tons, and as I mentioned earlier, it was done very, very successfully within the limited daylight hours that were available to the Air Force.
A connected question, sir. We are talking of Leh. The thing is that I've heard in my sort of little appearances once in a while in seminars that, you know, one of our limitations in upgrading our border infrastructure vis-a-vis the Chinese has been the capacity limitations of the Air Force to lift stuff from the planes to various positions near the boundary areas or the border areas with the Chinese for construction work to carry on. So, if you said that the Air Force has enormous capacity, 500 tons a day, I'm sure over a period of 1 or 2 months, it can meet the requirements, which is a long, I mean, these guys can't construct with 500 tons worth of equipment, even if they go in rocket speed in a week. So, what you can airlift and provide should be more than enough. So, why do people complain that there is not enough airlift capability?
Maruf, yes, very good question that you asked. But basic problem is not the airlift capability, is the last mile connectivity that we need. You know, we have always in the past perhaps thought in a particular way that if we did not, shall we say, improve our infrastructure in the border areas, especially in Arunachal and even in Ladakh, that it will be a sort of a good defensive, tactic. But it has been proven wrong. And as you know, the Chinese have built their roads all the way in each and every sector, whether you're talking about east, central, or in the western sector there, that is Ladakh, they have come right up to the border. And not only the roads, but the railway lines are also coming up right up to the border. We took much longer to realize that our earlier stance was not really an optimum way of doing things, and that we have to improve our infrastructure. So what happens is, today we can put 500 tons, let us say, in an airfield like Leh. We can even go to Thois and put that load. But then how to take it to the forward areas where it is required? And that is why the Air Force is now actually actively pursuing construction of 2 more airfields, for example, in Ladakh. So one is in Neoma, which is south of Leh, and one further north. We are even trying to actually make DBO sort of a permanent kind of airstrip where we can carry out air operations. And the very good thing which has happened is that now the DRDO, the border roads have built that road, right up to DBO. And therefore, it has become that much simpler to carry
that road has been a cause of confrontation also.
Sorry?
That road along the Shyok River has been a cause of the confrontation which took place in Galwan. But anyway, you've made a very valid point, sir, and you've brought me on to the question that I have for the good Air Marshal here, that the IAF's capability for airlifting troops, equipment, etc., including infantry combat vehicles, etc., is being considered for certain advanced landing grounds also, which is not your classic airfield, but which is really stretching the case for operational airlift. There is one in DBO. Yeah. Could you elaborate as to what could be the challenges in such kind of advanced landing grounds vis-a-vis the Chinese along the LAC and again in the area of Arunachal?
Yeah, let me first add to what Marshal Bhatia mentioned. In throughout the year, for last 50, 60 years, the army in entire Kashmir and Ladakh area is being air maintained every day. Every day, a large amount of air maintenance is going on for years, and a huge, more than 30,000 tons is allotted task to the army every year. So it's a huge air maintenance, mostly in Ladakh and Kashmir, little less in the northeast. The second point, which has not yet got discussed, is that we have talked a lot about the transport aircraft, large transport aircraft, which are actually carrying a whole heap of load from here to Leh. But there's a huge helicopter fleet that Indian Air Force has got, nearly 240 Mi-17 class of helicopters. Now we got Chinooks. I'm not talking of the attack helicopters, but for transportation from Leh to further areas, right up to DBO, to the Siachen Glacier, to the new areas that are being developed, right up to the LAC, helicopter fleet is playing a tremendous role. It's not only logistics, also inter-valley movement of things for the Indian Army. So therefore, helicopter fleet has got a huge role in that area. Now coming to the ALGs, we all have heard a lot about the 8 ALGs in the northeast, which have got upgraded in the last 5-7 years with modern aids, lengthened a little, some other infrastructure to be able to sustain a much higher degree of operations. Similar exercise is going on in Ladakh. Air Marshal mentioned about Neoma, which is presently like an ALG, but is going to be extended to a proper runway, more or less the size of Leh airfield. DBO, I have myself landed, and so has the Air Marshal landed in the DBO. Highest ground, 16,000 feet. There are complications of flying into at these altitudes, but we have shown it. We have done it with the AN-32. We have done with C-130. Presently, it is reinforced mud with a lot of oil and sheets, PSP sheets, with which we have done that. But there is a need to increase infrastructure there. They need to be. Once this road, which is going to DBO, is get fully operational, fully completed, more and more materials can go there. It will be so much easier to strengthen that runway and to elongate it a little. So, what are the risks and issues? These are very close. It is 15 kilometers from the Karakoram Pass. The Chinese are sitting there.
I know.
Of course, there will be complications, right? But that doesn't mean that you do not build airfields. The Chinese have also built airfields which are not too far away. And in any case, in today's time, with a cruise missile, you could hit any airfield even if it's 50, 60, 70 kilometers deep. So that should not prevent us from, upgrading and building up airfields in that area.
Okay, so Air Marshal sir, you were talking about high altitudes, and so was the distinguished Air Marshal also talking about a point which often some of us who are conscious of operational issues are aware, but people don't understand, because a lot of knowledge doing the rounds these days is internet centric. So the internet says this is the range of an aircraft, this is the capacity of an aircraft to airlift. So people ask these questions. Well, if it's the capacity, then why are you not lifting full capacity? And this is what brings us to the high altitude questions that you're aware, I'm aware, that the weather conditions being what they are don't allow you to operate at even far from optimum, even close to your 70-80% lift capacity after midday because of variety of high altitude restrictions. So therefore, aircrafts have to take off at early hours of the morning. Logistics arrangement have to go on through the night, and so they can take off and return by midday. So my question is that in all these areas, there is a lot of demand for the troops to be supplied and to be maintained, because what people don't understand that operations don't come onto your face the day come onto. You have to be preparing for it and be stocked for it forever. So could you give us an understanding of what are the challenges there, sir? Marshal Bhatia, sir.
Yes, Maruf, as you were talking about the limitations which high altitude actually imposes on the operations of aircraft. I just want to give you an example. Let's look at Mi-26. Anil was talking about the helicopter capability. Mi-26, for example, is the biggest helicopter in the world and has a load carrying capability of 20 tons. But those 20 tons load carrying capability is confined to sea level. And as we all know, as we keep gaining in altitude, this capability starts coming down for various reasons. One of them is the engine performance. There is degradation in that. And second thing is about the density, altitude, and so on and so forth, which are related to temperature and high altitude. So I was talking about the Mi-26. If it was to land at DBO, from 20 tons, its capability will reduce to approximately 4 to 5 tons only. That will be the capability which will be there. And a similar thing or similar restriction gets imposed on even fixed wing aircraft. So let us say C-17, which can carry 77 tons at sea level, will not be able to carry 77 tons, let us say, at DBO. Or even at Leh, it will have certain limitations. Perhaps it can land that load, but especially for takeoff from there, with that kind of load will not be possible.
Well put, sir. In fact, I'm aware how IAF pilots have regularly defied the laws of nature by pushing their aircrafts in Siachen Glacier and the helicopters to make sure that every last man is supplied and every casualty is evacuated come hell or high water. Hats off to them. Yeah. But my last question to you, Marshal Chopra, sir, and this is the IAF's constant role in rescuing Indian citizens from crisis areas. Yeah. Whether it was in all these situations from 2004 where tsunami onwards, or more recently when situation went absolutely out of hand in Afghanistan, and we used something called the Gisar military aerodrome, which is a position we have in Tajikistan, which many Indians don't know about, but it helped in rescuing Indian citizens. Briefly, sir, your views.
Yeah, I must tell you that as far as HADR is concerned, it's a round-the-year exercise for Indian Air Force. We are very proud of Operation Ganga that we did recently to get the children out from Ukraine, whether we did the similar exercise to get our people out from Yemen earlier, whether it was taking the oxygen cylinders from one part of the country to the other, whether getting our people back from Wuhan. So it's continuous. India is a large country with all kinds of weather. We have got floods happening somewhere. There is some skier stuck in the mountains somewhere. So that's an exercise continuously requiring movement and support. There are cyclones that we have on the East Coast. NDRF teams have to be moved. So this is an exercise with the Indian Air Force. Transport and helicopter fleets are undertaking all the very time. And they are specially geared. The pilots are specially trained for this kind of exercise. And I think that's one area which also endears us. First in, last out. Your first responders. We all know that in Nepal, the moment the earthquake took place and we moved, the first thing was to get the doctors, medicines, and to secure the people. Remarkable job was done. So same was done in Uttarakhand when we had the Uttarakhand floods in 2013.
Yes, I'm aware.
And so therefore, the armed forces as a whole have a big role, but Indian Air Force being the fastest is the first responder, and then we also carry the Army and the NDRF teams to these places. So
well put, sir.
Yeah.
Well put, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I'm totally short of time, but I think we've covered in the short span of time some of the key areas which people don't normally talk about and look at more carefully in terms of the IAF's contributions to national security. And national security is not just about guns and missiles and fighting air battles, but it is also about making sure that the troops are sustained, provided for, and supported through a lot of courageous IAF efforts, both in supplying them and giving them eyes and ears far beyond their trenches. Thank you very much, sir. And thanks to all of you for watching. Until our next episode, goodbye.